John Forbes Nash Jr. Now, that's a name a lot of us probably know from the movie A Beautiful Mind. But, the real story of the man is just so much more complex and, frankly, more dramatic than Hollywood could ever really show us.
I mean, to say his mind was brilliant is a massive understatement. This is a man who reached the absolute peak of his profession. He achieved something incredibly rare, winning both the Nobel Prize in economics and later the Abel Prize, which is basically the Nobel of mathematics.
And people knew it from the very beginning. Get this, when he applied to Princeton for his PhD, his advisor's recommendation letter had just one sentence. That's it. It just said, he is a mathematical genius.
And that question, that's really at the heart of his entire life story. We're about to look at the incredible highs of his genius, the terrifying lows of his illness, and what seems like a completely impossible journey back.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Nash's path from being this quiet kid in West Virginia to becoming one of the most famous minds at Princeton, well, it was unbelievably fast. It's the stuff of academic legend, really.
Nash's talent was just undeniable, right from the get-go. He absolutely blazed through his education, getting both a bachelor's and a master's degree from Carnegie Tech by the time he was just 20. And from there, he landed a coveted spot at Princeton.
And the foundation of his fame came from his PhD dissertation. And listen to this. It was only 28 pages long. But in it, he introduced what we now call the Nash Equilibrium. It was this totally revolutionary idea for predicting how people or companies will act when they're in conflict. Think of two rival gas stations on the same corner. The equilibrium is that price point where neither one can do better by changing their price on their own. It's a simple idea, but it completely changed economics, and today it influences everything from corporate strategy to evolutionary biology.
And he wasn't a one-hit wonder, not by a long shot. His work solved all these other huge mathematical problems that had stumped the best minds for decades. We even know from declassified letters that way back in the 1950s, he was already thinking about key concepts of modern digital cryptography years and years before its time. But then, just as his career was hitting this incredible peak, everything just came to a sudden and catastrophic stop. The very mind that was producing all these amazing ideas, it began to fracture.
The year was 1959. Nash was 30 years old, he had tenure at MIT, and his wife Alicia was pregnant. And it was right then that the first really severe signs of his mental illness began to show up, and his life changed forever.
His mind was just gripped by paranoia. He became convinced that men wearing red ties were part of a secret communist conspiracy. He started mailing letters to embassies, signing them as the Emperor of Antarctica. He saw hidden messages absolutely everywhere and was certain he was being hunted. He was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia.
He actually described it in his own words, saying his thinking shifted from scientific rationality into these dreamlike, delusional hypotheses. For years, he was just lost in that world, spending long stretches of time in and out of psychiatric hospitals. So, from that completely broken state, Nash somehow began one of the most remarkable recoveries ever documented, and without medication. It was this incredibly slow, quiet, and deeply personal journey to find his way back to reality.
And this timeline, it just shows you how long and grueling that road was. From his first hospitalization in '59, it took over 10 years until he was finally discharged for good. And then it was another 15 years before he could really start working in academia again. All told, nearly 30 years of his life were just lost to this illness.
A huge, huge part of his recovery was his ex-wife Alicia. Now, they had actually divorced back in 1963, but she took him into her home after he got out of the hospital for the last time in 1970. She was his anchor, providing the stability and the quiet life that he so desperately needed.
So during these years, he'd wander the halls of Princeton's math department, kind of a ghost-like figure, filling up blackboards with these incredibly complex equations in the middle of the night. The students had a nickname for him, the Phantom of Fine Hall. He was just a silent, eccentric presence who was slowly, painstakingly finding his way back to his work.
And this long, quiet period, it set the stage for his whole journey to come full circle. The man who had been lost to the world for decades was about to be rediscovered in the most incredible way possible.
Then, in 1994, the phone rang. It was the Nobel Committee. For the game theory work he had done as a graduate student, almost 50 years earlier, John Nash was being awarded the Nobel Prize. The Phantom was a genius once again.
And the recognition didn't stop there. In 2015, he received the prestigious Abel Prize, the Nobel of Mathematics, right? It was the ultimate validation, honoring the profound contributions he made across his entire turbulent life. But in a final, just heartbreakingly tragic twist, only days after they came back from Norway, where he received the Nobel Prize, John and Elisha Nash were killed in a taxi crash on their way home. After this whole life of such incredible turbulence, they died together, right at the peak of his celebrated comeback.
It really leaves you wondering, doesn't it? Was his beautiful mind the one that came up with revolutionary mathematics? Or was it the one that, against all odds, managed to piece itself back together from the fragments of profound mental illness? You know, maybe the real beauty is in the fact that you just can't separate the two.